Okay. Welcome back, everybody. Ladies, gentlemen, ghouls of the Unforgiven Night. Thank you for joining me today. I have spoken to a few of you guys very recently in the last few days and gotten some emails on top of that. That everyone wanted me to bring back Life and Death, and so I have decided that I will absolutely do that, and I will have chapters up over my weekends or some days in between, depending on what's going on. But I will go through the book for you guys. So I appreciate the feedback. I appreciate you guys coming to me and giving me the information that you did want this back. So I will finish this. I will even go through the rest of Twilight if that's what you guys feel is necessary. But I'm going to leave that up to you. At best, I'll read this, and then who knows? Maybe I'll read Midnight Sun. That depends on what's going on. Anyways, man, I feel like I was feeling kind of nervous earlier. This is technically take 3, just because I was running into a few complications, but here we are. So we're going to just hop right into it. Chapter 2, Open Book. The next day was better. And worse. It was better because it wasn't raining yet, though the clouds were dense and black. It was easier because I knew better what to expect of the day. Michaela came to sit by me in English and walked with me to my next class, with chess club Erica glaring at her all the way there. It was kind of flattering. People didn't stare at me quite as much as they had yesterday. I sat with a big group at lunch that included Michaela, Erica, Jeremy, Alan, and several other people whose names and faces I now remembered. I began to feel like I might be treading water instead of drowning in it. It was worse because I was tired. I still couldn't sleep with the rain as it was beating on the house. It was worse because Miss Varner called on me in trig when my hand wasn't raised and I had the wrong answer. It was miserable because I had to play volleyball. And the one time I didn't dodge out of the way of the ball, I hit 2 of my teammates in the head with one bad volley. And it was worse because Edith Cullen wasn't in school at all. All morning, I was trying not to think about lunch, not wanting to remember those hate-filled stares. Part of me wanted to confront her and demand to know what her problem was. While I was lying awake in bed, I even imagined out what I would say. But I knew myself too well to think that I would really have the guts to do it. Maybe if she hadn't been so abnormally beautiful. But when I walked into the cafeteria with Jeremy, trying to keep my eyes from sweeping the place for her, and totally failing, I saw that her 4 adopted siblings were sitting together at the same table as before, and she was not with them. Michaela intercepted us and steered us to her table. Jeremy seemed thrilled by the attention, and his friends quickly joined us. I tried to tune into the conversation around me, but I was still uncomfortable, waiting for Edith's arrival. I hoped that she would simply ignore me when she came, and prove that I was making a big deal out of nothing. She didn't come, and I got more and more tense. I walked to biology with more confidence when, by the end of lunch, she still hadn't showed. Michaela, who was starting to seem weirdly, territorial about me, walked by my side to class. I hesitated for a second at the door, but Edith Cullen wasn't here either. I exhaled and went to my seat. Michaela followed, talking about an upcoming trip to the beach. She lingered by my desk till the bell rang. Then she smiled at me wistfully and went to sit by a boy with braces and something close to a bowl cut. I didn't want to be arrogant, but I was pretty sure she was into me, which was a strange feeling. Girls hadn't noticed me much at home. I wondered if I wanted her to like me. She was sort of pretty and everything, but her attention made me feel a little uncomfortable. Why was that? Because she picked me instead of the other way around? That was a stupid reason. Ego running wild, like it had to be my decision first. Still, it was not as stupid as the other possibility. I'd thought of. I really hoped it wasn't because of the time that I'd been, staring at Edith Cullen yesterday, but I was kind of afraid that it was. Which was about to be the stupidest thing possible, really. If I based my reaction to a girl's looks off of a face like Edith's, I was doomed. That was fantasy, not reality. I was glad that I had the desk to myself, that Edith wasn't here. I told myself that again and again. Still, I couldn't get rid of this annoying feeling that I was the reason she was gone. It was ridiculous and egotistical again to think that I could affect anyone that much. It was impossible, but I couldn't stop worrying about it. When the school day was finally done and the patches of red were fading out of my face from the latest volley incident, I changed quickly back into my jeans and heavy sweater. I rushed across the locker room, glad to find that I had successfully evaded Michaela for the moment. I hurried out to the parking lot. It was crowded now with fleeing students. I got in my truck and dug through my backpack to make sure I still had what I needed. It was still no secret that Charlie couldn't cook. Not much besides fried eggs and bacon. Last night I'd requested that I be assigned kitchen detail for the duration of my stay. He was willing enough to let me take over. A quick search revealed that he had no food in the house. So I had my grocery list and the cash from the jar in the cupboard labeled food money, and I was headed to the thriftway. I gunned the thunderous engine to life, ignoring the heads that turned in my direction, and backed into a place in the line of cars that were waiting to exit the parking lot. As I waited, trying to pretend that the ear-splitting rumble was coming from someone else's car, I saw the two Cullens and the Hale twins walking up to their car. It was the shiny new Volvo. Of course, I hadn't noticed their clothes before. I'd been too mesmerized by their faces. Now that I looked, it was obvious that they were all wearing stuff that was probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. Attractive as they all were, they could have worn garbage sacks and started a trend. It seemed like too much for them to have both looks and money, though as far as I could tell, life worked out that way most of the time. It didn't look like it bought them any popularity here, but I couldn't really believe that. The isolation had to be something they chose. I couldn't imagine any door their beauty wouldn't open for them. They looked at my noisy truck as I passed them, just like everyone else. Except they weren't anything like anyone else. I saw that the big blonde guy, Royal, it must be, figured, anyway, Royal, had his hand casually on the hip of the really tall girl with the dark curly hair, who looked like she was just as familiar with the weight room as he was. He had to be a good 2 inches taller than even I was, but he had only half an inch on her, though he was obviously pretty sure of himself. I was still kind of surprised he felt comfortable doing that. Not that she wasn't hot, she was super mega hot, but not approachable? Like, not even The Rock would dare whistle at her if you know what I mean. The blonde girl caught me looking the way her eyes narrowed, made me turn straight ahead and punch the gas. The truck didn't go any faster, the engine just grumbled even louder. The thriftway was not far from school. A few streets south, off the highway, it was nice to be inside the supermarket. Felt normal. I did most of the shopping at home, and I fell easily into the pattern of the familiar job. The store was big enough inside that I couldn't hear the tapping of the rain on the roof to remind me where I was. When I got home, I unloaded all the groceries, reorganizing the cupboards till everything was in a place that made sense. Charlie's system was kind of haphazard. I hope Charlie wouldn't mind that he wasn't OCD about his kitchen the way I was. Once I was satisfied with the organization, I worked on the prep for dinner. I kind of have a sixth sense about my mom, I realized. As I was sticking the marinade-covered steak into the fridge, I hadn't let her know I made it in yesterday. She was probably freaking out. I ran up the stairs, 2 at a time, and fired up the old computer in my room. It took a minute to wheeze to life, and then I had to wait for a connection. Once I was online, 3 messages showed up in my inbox. The first was from yesterday, while I was still en route. Bo, my mom wrote. Write me as soon as you get in. Tell me how your flight was. Is it raining? I miss you already. I'm almost finished packing for Florida, but I can't find my pink blouse. Do you know where I put it? Phil says hi. Mom. I signed and went to the next. It was sent 6 hours after the first. Bo, why haven't you emailed me yet? What are you waiting for? Mom. The last was from this morning. Beaufort Swan. If I haven't heard from you by 5:30 p.m. today, I'm calling Charlie. I checked the clock. I still had an hour, but Mom was known for jumping the gun. Mom, calm down. I'm writing right now. Don't do anything crazy. Bo. I sent that, and then started the next, beginning with a lie. Everything is great. Of course it's raining. I was waiting for something to write about. School isn't bad, just a little repetitive. I met some okay kids who sit by me at lunch. Your shirt is at the dry cleaners. You were supposed to pick it up on Friday. Charlie bought me a truck. Can you believe it? It's awesome. It's old, but really sturdy, which is good. You know, for me. I miss you too. I'll write again soon. But I'm not going to check my email every 5 minutes. Relax. Breathe. I love you. Bo. I heard the front door bang open, and I hurried downstairs to take the potatoes out and put the steak into broil. Bo, my father called out when he heard me on the stairs. Who else? I thought to myself. Hey, Dad, I'll come home. Thanks. He hung up his gun belt and stepped out of his boots, and as I moved around the kitchen. As far as I was aware, he'd never shot the gun on the job, but he kept it ready. When I'd come here as a child, he would always remove the bullets as soon as he walked in the door. I guess he considered me old enough now not to shoot myself by accident, and not depressed enough to shoot myself on purpose. What's for dinner? He asked warily. Mom was an imaginative cook, when she bothered, and her experiments weren't always edible. I was surprised and sad that he seemed to remember that far back. Steak and potatoes, I answered. Charlie looked relieved. He obviously felt awkward standing in the kitchen doing nothing. He lumbered into the living room to watch TV while I worked. I think that we were both more comfortable that way. I made a salad while the steak cooked and set the table. I called him in when dinner was ready, and he sniffed appreciatively as he walked into the room. Smells good, Bo. Thanks. We ate in silence for a minute. It wasn't awkward. Both of us liked quiet. In some ways, we were good roommates. So, how did you like school? Make any friends? he asked as he was taking seconds. Well, I have a few classes with this guy named Jeremy. I sit with his friends at lunch, and there's this girl, Michaela, who's friendly. Everybody seems pretty nice, with one outstanding exception. That must be Michaela Newton. Nice girl. Nice family. Her dad owns the sporting goods store just outside of town. He makes a good living off all the backpackers who come through here. We ate in silence for a few more minutes. Do you know the Cullen family? I asked, trying to sound casual. Dr. Cullen's family? Sure. She's a great woman. The kids are a little, different. They don't seem to fit in very well with everyone at school. I was surprised to see Charlie's face get red the way it does when he's angry. People in this town, he muttered. Dr. Cullen is a brilliant surgeon who could probably work in any hospital in the world, make 10 times the salary she gets here, he continued, getting louder. We're lucky to have her. Lucky that her husband wanted to live in a small town. She's an asset to the community, and all those kids are well behaved and polite. I had my doubts when they first moved in. With all those adopted teenagers, I thought we might have some problems with them. But they're all very mature. I haven't had one speck of trouble from any of them. That's more than I can say for half the children and some of the folks who have lived in this town for generations. And they stick together the way a family should. Camping trips every other weekend. Just because they're newcomers, people have to talk. It was the longest speech I'd ever heard Charlie make. He must feel very strongly about whatever people were saying. I backpedaled. They seemed nice enough to me. I just noticed they kept to themselves. And they're all very attractive, I added, trying to be more complimentary. You should see the doctor, Charlie said, laughing. It's a good thing she's happily married. A lot of the hospital staff have a hard time concentrating on their work with her around. We lapsed back into silence as we finished eating. He cleared the table while I started on the dishes. He went back to the TV, and after I finished washing the dishes by hand, no dishwasher, I went upstairs to work on my math homework. I could feel a tradition in the making. That night it was finally quiet. I fell asleep fast, exhausted. The rest of the week was uneventful. I got used to the routine of my classes. By Friday, I was able to recognize, if not name, almost all the kids at school. In gym, the people on my team learned not to send the ball my direction. I stayed out of their way. Edith Cullen didn't come back to school. Every day I watched, pretending I wasn't looking until the rest of the Cullens entered the cafeteria without her. Then I could relax and join in the conversation. Mostly it was centered around a trip to the La Push Ocean Park in 2 weeks that Michaela was putting together. I was invited, and I agreed to go, more out of politeness than a strong urge to hit the beach. I believed beaches should be hot, and aside from the ocean, dry. By Friday, I was totally comfortable entering my biology class, no longer worried that Edith would show. For all I knew, she'd dropped out of school. I tried not to think about her, but I couldn't totally erase the worry that I was responsible for her continued absence, ridiculous as it seemed. My first weekend in Forks continued without incident. Charlie worked most of the time. I wrote my mom more fake, cheerful emails, got ahead on my homework, and cleaned up the house. Obviously, OCD wasn't a problem for Charlie. I drove to the library Saturday, but I didn't even bother to get a card. There wasn't anything interesting I hadn't read. I would have to visit Olympia or Seattle soon to find a good bookstore. I wondered idly what kind of gas mileage the truck got and winced at the thought. The rain stayed soft over the weekend, quiet, so I was able to sleep. People greeted me in the parking lot Monday morning. I didn't know all their names, but I smiled at everyone. It was colder this morning, but at least it wasn't raining. In English, Michaela took her now normal seat by my side. We had a pop quiz on Wuthering Heights. It was straightforward, very easy. All in all, I was feeling a lot more comfortable than I had thought I would feel by this point. More comfortable than I had ever expected to feel here. When we walked out of class, the air was full of swirling bits of white. I could hear people shouting excitedly to each other. The wind was freezing against my cheeks, my nose. Wow, Michaela said, it's snowing. I looked at the little cotton fluffs that were building up along the sidewalk and swirling erratically past my face. Ugh, snow. There went my good day. She looked surprised. Don't you like snow? Snow means it's too cold for rain, obviously. Besides, I thought it was supposed to come down in flakes. You know, each one unique and all that. These just look like the ends of Q-tips. Haven't you ever heard or seen snowfall before? She said incredulously. Sure I have, I paused. On TV. Michaela laughed, and then a big wet ball of dripping snow smacked the back of her head. We both turned to see where it came from. I suspected Erica, who was walking away, her back towards us in the wrong direction for her next class. Michaela had the same idea. She bent over and began scraping together a pile of white mush. I'll see you at lunch, okay? I kept walking as I spoke. The last thing I wanted was a wad of dirty ice melting down my neck the rest of the day. She just nodded, her eyes on Erica's back. I kept a sharp lookout on the way of the cafeteria with Jeremy after Spanish. Mush balls were flying everywhere. I had a binder in my hands ready to use as a shield. Jeremy thought I was hilarious, but something in my expression kept him from lobbing a snowball at me himself. Michaela caught up with us as we walked to the doors, laughing, her usual sleek hair turning frizzy from the wet. She and Jeremy were talking animatedly about the snow fight as we got in line to buy food. I glanced towards the table in the corner, out of habit. And then I froze where I stood. There were 5 people at the table. Jeremy pulled on my arm. Hey, Bo, what do you want? I looked down. My ears were hot. I had no reason to feel self-conscious. I reminded myself I hadn't done anything wrong. What's with Bo? Michaela asked Jeremy. Nothing, I answered. I grabbed a soda bottle as I caught up with the end of the line. Aren't you hungry? Jeremy asked. Actually, I feel a little sick, I said. He shuffled a few steps away from me. I waited for them to get their food and then followed them to the table, my eyes anywhere but the back corner of the cafeteria. I drank my soda slowly, stomach churning. Twice, Michaela asked with a concerned tone that I seemed a little over the top how I was feeling. I told her that it was nothing, but I was wondering if I should play it up and escape to the nurse's office for the next hour. Ridiculous. I shouldn't have to run away. Why was I being such a coward? Was it so bad to be glared at? It wasn't like she was going to stab a knife in me. I decided to allow myself one glance at the Cullen family table. Just read the mood. I kept my head turned away and glanced out of the side of my eye. None of them were looking this way. I turned my head a little more. They were laughing. Edith, Jessamine, and Eleanor all had their hair entirely saturated with melting snow. Archie and Royal were leaning away as Eleanor flipped her dripping hair toward them, leaving a wide arc of splatters across the front of their jackets. They were enjoying the snowy day just like everyone else. only they looked more like a scene from a movie than the rest of us. But aside from the laughter and the playfulness, there was something different, and I couldn't quite figure out what that difference was. I examined Edith, comparing her to the memory of last week. Her skin was less pale, I decided, flushed from the snow fight, maybe. The circles under her eyes were much less noticeable. Her hair was darker, wet, slicked down against her head. But there was something else. I forgot to pretend I wasn't staring as I tried to put my finger on the change. What are you staring at, Bo? Jeremy asked. At that precise moment, Edith's eyes flashed over to meet mine. I turned my head completely toward Jeremy, shifting my shoulders in his direction, too. Jeremy leaned away, surprised by my sudden invasion of his personal space. I was sure, though, in that instant our eyes had met. She didn't look angry or disgusted as she had the last time I'd seen her. She looked curious again, unsatisfied in some way. Edith Cullen is staring at you, Jeremy said, looking over my shoulder. She doesn't look angry, does she? I couldn't help asking. No? Jeremy looked confused. Then he suddenly smiled. What did you do? Ask her out? No. I've never even talked to her. I don't think she likes me very much, I admitted. I kept my body angled toward Jeremy, but the back of my neck had goosebumps. I could feel her eyes on me. The Cullens don't like anybody. Well, they don't notice anybody enough to like them. But she's still staring at you. Stop looking at her, I insisted. He snickered, but finally looked away. Michaela interrupted us then. She was planning an epic battle of the blizzard in the parking lot after school and wanted us to join. Jeremy agreed enthusiastically. The way he looked at Michaela left little doubt that he would be up for anything she suggested. I kept silent. I wondered how many years I would have to live in Forks before I was bored enough to find frozen water exciting. Probably much longer than I planned to be here.